I think what I'm trying to do with, Stephen's legacy or, the legacy of Ashton Hills is kind of just honour that honesty of what we produce.
G'day. Today we're going to ask the question, is Ashton Hills producing the best Pinot Noir in the country? I'm Trent, so we're here on an unapologetically unprofessional, unfiltered wine journey. And we're saying here, we drink, we try, we learn, and we connect. Now, in the early 1980s, Stephen George had ambition to produce the best Pinot Noir in the country. Situated in the Piccadilly Valley of the Adelaide Hills. Nearly 40 years on, there's a changing of the guard. There is a chap by the name of Liam Van Pelt who's taken the reins and taken on the legacy of Ashton Hills. Today we are going to talk about Ashton Hills, but we're also going to talk about the thoughts, philosophy, looking forward to the future and walking that tightrope between legacy and innovation. And also understand whether Ashton Hills is more than just Pinot Noir as well. So Liam, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
No worries, mate. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here and it's great to catch up again.
Yeah, in rainy Sydney.
In rainy Sydney. No, it's nice. It's lovely.
Yeah. To kick off, got to know a bit more about yourself. Icebreaker questions.
Righto.
First one, what's the most memorable wine or most memorable wine moment?
There has been many. I would have to say, being a scholar of the Len Evans tutorial in 2015, in one particular dinner over that time, I was sitting across from James Halliday and I was, fully dressed up to the nines. And I guess I identified a wine incorrectly. And he sort of looked at me and these weren't his exact words, but it was along the lines of, you've got a shit palate, but at least you look good. So I took that. Everyone had a bit of a laugh and we moved on. But that week was pretty amazing. So definitely the Len Evans.
Fantastic. What's the last glass of wine that you had?
Well, we've been in Sydney for 2 days repping Ashton Hills, so it has been Ashton Hills. But we were at a little restaurant yesterday showing some wines, Le Bistro Nom in Canberra. And after we finished the tasting there, I had a sneaky glass of Champagne de la Motte just to cleanse the palate. So it was pretty delicious.
Fantastic. Okay, if you could share a bottle with anyone past or present, what bottle would you pick and why?
Oh, look, I'd have to say I'd have the bottle with my dad. Dad's still with us.
Yeah.
But due to a bit of ill health, he doesn't drink anymore. So I'd say my dad about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I reckon we'd share a bottle of Wynn's Coonawarra Cabernet. That was pretty popular around the household when I was growing up. So I'd like to be the age I am now, but yeah, Dad probably 30 years ago. I reckon he'd have some bloody good stories. So
yeah, relive some memories as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Next one, unique or ultimate food and wine pairing?
A particular brand of fried chicken and crook champagne. Yeah. Yep.
A particular brand.
KFC. KFC and Krug. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
hot and spicy, original, wicked wings.
Yeah. Just some original. And the acidity of Krug just cuts through. It's delicious.
How many times have you had that?
Couple.
Next one. Biggest lesson learned on your wine journey?
Top your barrels. Trust the process and trust your gut and your instinct. Yeah. And that was something that Stephen really sort of made me believe or instilled in me was, trust the process.
Has that evolved? Has there been a few moments where you go, maybe this, maybe that?
There's been a few moments where I've gone, holy shit, it's not going the way I want it to go, but it has turned out the way I want it to go. But it's probably, lesson from Stephen is, don't get too close to the wine. You can overanalyze things. You can overthink things. Keep it simple. Trust the process and it all works out.
We'll delve into your philosophy.
We might delve into that later, yeah.
Okay, next one. If you could bottle a moment of your life like a vintage, what vintage would it be and why?
I might take the Samiotti method here and do a multi-vintage blend. Cheat the system.
Yeah.
I've got 3 daughters. And so I'd have to say the birth years of those daughters, kids really change your perspective. And each child, sort of alters your perspective. And
some good, some bad.
Mostly good. Mostly good. Depends how much sleep you've had. So I'd have to say, 2015, 2023 and 2025 multi-vintage blend. But yeah.
Okay, next one. Is there a dish that instantly takes you back to your childhood?
Lamb loin chops, sliced potato and onion on the barbecue, tomato sauce. I'll eat hundreds of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Next one. If you weren't a winemaker, what would you be doing?
Anything.
At KFC.
At KFC, yeah. I mean, I have worked in hospitality while I was going through wine school. I do love hospitality and I love going out and getting really good service. I think it's an art form that is probably not appreciated in Australia as much as it is, particularly in Europe. So I'd have to say I would go back to hospitality in some
a barista?
Fashion.
No?
Yeah, I do. I mean,
I can see you as that.
I do like my coffees. I don't like early mornings, so I'm probably not the greatest barista. Yeah, in a nice sort of pub restaurant, hotel, nice service, good food. Yeah.
Okay,
Or a
fantastic.
diesel mechanic.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, after that, we got to chill out a bit. We're going to have the first one of the range, which is the 2025 Chardonnay from Ashton Hills. Tell us about this one.
So, Ashton's based in the Piccadilly Valley of the Adelaide Hills, the higher, cooler, wetter part of the Adelaide Hills. And, Chardonnay has long been the hero variety of the wider Adelaide Hills. Warmer areas produce lovely sort of robust styles of Chardonnay. The cooler sites like Piccadilly, more sort of elegance, perfume, florals, things like that. So this is sourced from 2 vineyards in the Piccadilly that we lease. So we do all the viticultural management on them and are able to take all the fruit. So 2 beautiful sites in the Piccadilly. Very simple winemaking, all hand-picked, whole bunch pressed straight to French oak puncheons, wild fermentation, and then 9 months maturation on solids. So I guess, we really want the Piccadilly Chardonnay to have a lovely kind of white stone fruit profile to it, sort of really exhibit those lovely sort of floral characteristics of the Chardonnay and have that sort of beautiful spine of acidity that Piccadilly is famous for. So
quite way to freshen the palate, I think, before we delve into the Pinots. But we start off with your wine journey first. Where did it start? You mentioned hospitality before, but before that, you look so young. You look like you're like 21 years old. So
I certainly don't feel it. So I was, finished high school and went on and did a bit of hospitality, just passing time. Wine was always around our family, but never, really, super involved in it. It got to a stage, where I was like, I kind of need to go and do something here.
But you grew up in South Australia?
Grew up in Adelaide, just close to the beach in Glenelg. So definitely not wine country. Yeah. And got to a stage where I thought I need to do something here. I liked cooking at the time as well. So I was like, do I go and be a chef?
You look like a chef as well.
I was like, I don't want to fry schnitzels in a pub for the rest of my life. Yeah. And so I was like, I was drinking a lot of wine and I had some friends, we thought we were, collecting wine and drinking well. So I thought I will give winemaking a go. Seems like good fun. Yeah, enrolled in the winemaking course and sort of never looked back. 2 years into the degree, took a year off and travelled to Europe and did a vintage in Italy with a mate of mine just to check that I actually enjoyed the industry. There's not much point doing the degree and then finding out you actually hate the job. Yeah, came back, finished, and then was up in the Clare Valley for a couple of years working, which was really cool. So did a vintage with Jeff Grosset in 2010 and Cole and Jen at Adelina Wines, which was really great. And then scored a sort of my first, full-time job in the wine industry at Chapel Hill down in McLaren Vale. So moved down there.
Where did it click for you in terms of this is my career, this is what I want to do? And I don't want to be a chef or whatever.
The first vintage. So 2008, I took a year off, worked at Darrenberg in McLaren Vale. I worked night shift. It was a crazy big vintage. It was long, it was hot as well. And so I was working night shift where, it was cooler. So we enjoyed it much more than the day shift people. Yeah. I just really enjoyed the sort of teamwork, the camaraderie. It's long, it's hard, but, at the end you feel like you've achieved something. And so I loved that sort of vintage experience. And, now I get a huge amount of pleasure of being able to say, when I walk in to have dinner with someone or like, here's a bottle of something that I produce, whether you like it or not, I don't really mind, but this is something that I've worked on and I can show you, the fruits of my labor, I guess. But
you mentioned like Darrenberg, you mentioned Grosset as well. You've been all around the place, even at such a young age again. How did you lead your way into Ashton Hills?
Yeah, so the wine industry is pretty popular in South Australia. However, it was really hard to get to the next level in terms of winemaking. I was assistant winemaker at Chapel Hill, but the winemaking job was never up for grabs kind of thing, and there wasn't sort of many jobs going around the region. And for family reasons, I was kind of bound to South Australia, so I couldn't sort of travel abroad anymore, and I kind of got a little bit jacked of the wine industry and not being able to sort of keep moving up. I went and did a vintage with Andrew Thomas in 2019 over in the Hunter Valley and just drank Peronis for about 7 weeks straight.
Must have a few stories.
And it was exactly what I needed.
Everyone's got a story about Thomas.
Yeah. It was wild. It was good fun. But I came back and just through, I guess, a bit of chance and a bit of serendipity and a little bit of hard work, ended up working alongside Stephen at Ashton Hills. And it was only a vintage casual role. Like it wasn't supposed to be anything but that. met Stephen, and his kind of first question was, why don't you have a real job? You seem to know what you're doing. Like, why are you here? And so we were picking some grapes at that stage with a few friends of his, and, we were chatting and lots of questions coming from his direction to me. And, we got on really well. And then over vintage, he just sort of said, we'll get you a job here at Ashton Hills. In 2016, he'd sold the business to a couple of families from Adelaide. They also own Wirra Wirra and Harndorf Hill now in the Adelaide Hills. And he said, we'll get you a job here. They need someone up here. And so we started, each day scheming of ideas of why Ashton Hills needed a caretaker.
Did James Halliday give him a call? Is that right?
Yeah, no. I didn't call on James to put in a reference for me. And so at the end of vintage, Stephen said, thanks, it was really enjoyable. Gave me a 6-pack of wine, said, we'll see what we can do about getting you a job here. A couple of weeks later, he rang me and he said, have you got a second? Yeah. He said, I'm just going to read you what I've written to Andrew, who was the CEO of Wirra at the time. And he read out this letter and he said, what do you think? And I said, if you believe everything that you've just written there, that sounds good. We'll see how we go. And he sent the letter in. And then, about 2 weeks after that, I had a phone call from Andrew saying, would you like to come in? We think we might have, created a role.
What was in the letter though?
I would love to have a copy of it. I don't know where it ended up. He just said that he wanted to step back from the winemaking a bit and thought that, I would be really suitable to take over. I could mow the lawns one day, do cellar one day, clean the toilets and, make sure that the
and so then we'll do it for free as well, right?
Yeah. And then, do a bit of winemaking on the side. So, that has morphed, from that role, which that's how it started. It has morphed into sort of more of the, winemaking and oversight of the entire site. He fully endorsed me to get a role that didn't exist. So I'm certainly very thankful to him.
But how does that work though? Are you like cold calling people going, hey, I want to work here, I want to work there?
Yeah, it starts with vintages. You ring up and you're like, well, you send an email and say, I'd love to come to vintage with you. And, my aim at the time when I left university, I was like, I just need to work with, the best producers that I can. And, Jeff Grosset and, Adelina, just so you get to experience the best. Like being a chef, I didn't want to fry schnitzels. Yeah. Same with winemaking. I didn't want to work at, the larger, Penfolds, Wolf Blass. No shade on those. They make terrific wines, but that wasn't the side of the industry I was interested in. And, so I know I pigeonholed myself, down to, working with smaller producers, but, eventually.
But what caught your eye on Ashton Hill? So did you have their wines before? Was it Stephen George?
I had their wines before.
Yeah.
I was just lucky enough to be, recommended to be the person to work with Stephen. So it was purely by accident. I hadn't contacted him to work there. I was actually going to be at Wirra as just a casual cellar hand for vintage. And again, this was in the time where I was just like, I'm out of the wine industry. I've had enough. And Stephen needed someone to help over vintage. So he rang Smithy, who was the winemaker at the time, and said, can you send someone up? And Smithy said, I reckon we've got the perfect person, lives in town, he's a winemaker, I'll bring him up. And the rest is history. So it really was
fate.
It really was fate. And a bit of luck and a bit of, right place, right time. But that's not to say I didn't work, incredibly hard beforehand to make sure I was kind of around there. So had the Ashton Hills wines before, particularly the Pinot is incredibly popular in South Australia, pretty parochial to our producers. And so to be able to work with Stephen for a couple of years and still have him around, he still lives on site at the winery. And that sort of transfer of knowledge that, he lived and breathed that place for 40 years. Pretty much never wrote anything down. So it's all in his head. And so to be able to sort of tease a bit of information out of him, each year in terms of the vintage and the wines is incredibly, important and special.
Your fate is one thing, but also create your own opportunities as well.
Yeah.
But what was that feeling when you got that letter and he read it out to you as well? Was it like,
Yeah. No, I was in my car. I was in the car park to go into work at a pub and pour beers. Yeah. And he read it out to me and I was almost in tears hearing it, just be like, oh, wow, like here is someone that could basically choose anyone. Yeah. Obviously saw something in me and believes that I'm the right person to continue his hard work and legacy is pretty special. And I kind of it didn't really dawn on me until about 2 years into the job. A really good mate of mine who's a winemaker as well rang me and we were talking about stuff and he said, if I stuff up, it's his own brand and no one really cares. He's like, but if you stuff it up, man, you're stuffing up 4 years. He's like, all right, got to go. And I hung up and I stood there and so I was like, oh yeah, I can't make a mistake here, but no, it's good.
So part of that legacy, but also looking forward. Let's go on to our next wine, which is the 2025 Piccadilly Valley Pinot Noir.
So this is sourced from, again, these 2 vineyards that we lease. But when I started at Ashton Hills in 2019, this was pretty much predominantly made up of fruit that we bought from growers around the Piccadilly. So it's been a really important step in our story to be able to lease these 2 vineyards and, elevate the quality of fruit that are going into, the Chardonnay and the Pinot as well. But just like the Chardonnay, this is all about, elegance, that real nice pop of florals on the aromatics.
Jumps out of the glass.
Lovely sort of real bright red fruit characteristics and a lovely sort of dusty tannin profile. All aged in seasoned French oak, 10 months. Again, pretty simply made wine, but just making sure that the fruit that goes into it is of the best quality that we can get. So, yeah, a really important wine in our portfolio or our lineup, being the one that, is seen at most, bistros and stuff by the glass. So, yeah, it's a hugely important wine to us.
Yeah, so hugely important. But for the punters at home, these 2 are the ones that, I hate to say like base range or standard range.
Yeah, there's nothing below that. So that's what you walk into.
Okay.
It's the Piccadilly range. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Even for what you walk into, it's spectacular. Yeah. So again, back to Stephen George. He wrote that letter. Obviously, he saw something in you. What do you think he saw in you?
That's a good question. Yeah, I may look quite young, but I'm probably an old man in a younger looking body, I suppose. No, we
old
just,
soul.
Yeah, old soul. We had very similar views on wines that we liked, wines that we didn't like, and the methodology behind those. And we shared a very similar sense of humour. Yeah, and I guess a love for producing nice things.
Yeah. Seems like you found common ground.
Ground, like, his Pinots over the years, people love them. They're very honest wines. Some years the alcohols were a little bit higher than others. Other years there was, creep into volatility, but they were always beautifully honest, delicious wines that people love drinking. And that's exactly what I wanted to do, is be able to make, beautiful wines that people enjoyed, that were a real reflection of, me, the site, and kind of the history of Ashton Hills as well.
So maybe what he saw in you was a bit of himself.
A young version of himself. Yeah. There was, at the time, there was this app that did like the face thing of you in like 50 years time, and someone did it and like showed it to me, and I had the white hair like Steve, and I was like, oh, well, that's a bit creepy actually, but yeah, we'll see. Beautiful, humble human being.
Yeah. And you say Stephen is one of those people that's like synonymous with elite winemaking, and also in South Australia as well. Like, what was that first meeting like with Stephen? He seems like a bit of a character, though, right?
He's a pretty easygoing guy.
Yeah.
Doesn't like wearing shoes.
Even the media?
No.
Snakes and everything like that?
Yeah,
no?
he'll wear thongs. So the first time I met him, I reckon we went and toured a couple of vineyards, and he was in a pair of thongs.
I thought he meant barefoot, like one of those people.
Oh, he loves going in the winery. He'd be barefoot most of the time. Yeah, it's hopping in and out of fermenters.
Woolies, Coles.
Yeah. No, it's pretty funny. Yeah, first meeting. So the first meeting was Smithy and Anton, our viticulturist. We drove up to see Stephen. We picked some fruit the next day, so it was pretty close to vintage happening, 2019. Toured around a couple of vineyards. As I said, he's very inquisitive, so asking lots of questions. And then he said, tomorrow I'm picking some 4 rows of fruit with some friends of mine. Do you want to come up? I said, yeah, sure. So came up and drove the tractor, and it was him and his partner and a friend of 2 friends of his. So 5 of us picked 4 rows of fruit. And lots of questions back and forth. And
was he testing you out?
What do you think of this? Yeah, it certainly was. It was like, what do you think of, this wine? Or, you've done the Len Evans, what was that like? And, and then afterwards we crushed a bit of fruit and then sat down on the bench outside the cellar door and drank a couple of bottles of Burgundy.
Yeah. What do you think about this?
That was probably where I went, I could get used to this. Yeah. And then every day, for the vintage 2019, we'd finish vintage or finish the day's work.
Yeah.
I'd be hosing the floors down, and he'd say, do you want a glass of wine? I'd say, sure. And he'd drive around the corner to the Ashton cold store, which is where his wine storage is. And he'd come back, and then we'd sit in cellar door and have a piece of cheese and a biscuit, and more often than not, a glass of fairly decent aged Burgundy, and just like talk about the wine, not overly analysing it, but what do you like about this? What don't you like about it? What would fit in with the wine? The wines that we make here, and I look back on those afternoons, and it was really great.
What did he say about your palate?
He thinks it's a little bit better than James's. Yeah, look, no, we taste wine a lot, and I'd like to think that it has got a tiny bit better than what it was perhaps in 2015.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely do have a lot of similar thoughts on wines and how they might fit into our style, or what bits and pieces we could take to put on our wines.
I'm going to take the pressure off you. Let's talk about Ashton Hills now.
That's okay.
What is the story of Ashton Hills? Why is it called Ashton Hills?
So Ashton Hills, we are in the township of Ashton, and we are on a hill. So
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. So in the late 70s, Stephen was looking for a site to plant a vineyard in the Adelaide Hills. Has a particular love for the wines of Burgundy, and looking for a site to plant, particularly Pinot Noir. He was driving around with his family and saw a for sale sign on a Brussels sprout farm. And thought this looked like a pretty good patch of dirt to grow grapes. And so there's still a lot of market gardens around the Piccadilly these days. Ripped the Brussels sprouts out and then planted the estate vineyard in 1982. And named it Ashton Hills because we were in the township of Ashton and we were on a hill. And although Pinot was sort of the centre of what he wanted to plant, he also planted a few other varieties, Chardonnay, Riesling, Gewürztraminer, Pinot Gris, Cabernet, these sorts of things. But as I said, his love was Pinot, and he planted different clones of Pinot to really sort of find out what worked best on our site. And over 40 years now, Stephen's trialled 27 different clones of Pinot. And that's, sort of growing those clones, making wine out of that. If he liked the wine, that clone stayed. If he didn't like it, he'd do something about it, plant a different clone. And a lot of those other varieties have succumbed to being grafted over to Pinot. So we still have 8 rows of Riesling on our estate vineyard, but the rest is now Pinot. So I think it's a lot of research and development and a lot of trial and error on one patch of land. But yeah, he was really committed to just that patch of dirt and seeing what works absolutely best.
And when you say that patch of dirt, it's only like 3 hectares, right?
3 hectares, yeah.
Which is a very
tiny.
Small, right? Yeah. Doing 27 different clones.
Yeah. So they weren't in the ground all at once. I think the most he had in the ground at once was sort of like 16 clones. Some of his earlier estates, kind of on the back label, he says a mix of 16 clones or something. But yeah, it was, I laugh if you walked into your bank manager now and said, I'm going to buy this patch of dirt and I'm not going to find out how it works for 40 years. They'd tell you to get out. So we're definitely reaping the benefits of his hard work.
So how many clones are you using now on these Pinots?
I mean, on the estate, it is the 7 clones, which we'll try later. We source probably about 6 other clones in our Piccadilly Pinot, 5, 6. So I think that's really important in being able to build layers of interest and texture into the wine. Each clone each year has a different characteristics about it, which I think is incredibly important in building the wine.
Cool. So Stephen had that vision 1982 about Ashton Hills, and he's one of the pioneers as well within that area. Are there any kind of stories you could share about yourself and Stephen that you've come across that maybe people don't know about?
People don't know about. I mean, not really. He is, I think, the story that most people are like fearful of him or think that he might be a cranky old man or something, and he might walk past cellar door and people are like, oh, Stephen. But he's incredibly generous with his time, to other young winemakers, much younger than me, around the area in terms of, knowledge of previous vintages or being able to show wines. He loves to share wines with people that care and are interested. So each Friday afternoon at 4:30, he has a bit of a tasting group with a few locals, and the only rule is you bring something interesting. It has to be blind. And then they try and sort of like learn something about each other's wines. But yeah, he's incredibly generous with his time and his wine cellar and his knowledge. So yeah, people might sort of be a little bit afraid, I suppose. But yeah, he's a lovely guy. And I suppose it's also important to acknowledge that he has also been responsible for the wines of Wendouree. Since I think it was the late 70s, he met Tony and Lita, is still involved with that project to this day. So to be responsible for some of the most, bolder wines of South Australia and Australia. And the elegance. And then to come and, also have the elegance and stuff of Ashton Hills is
the full spectrum.
It's pretty incredible for one winemaker to be able to balance both of those, I think. Yeah.
Did he ever say what he saw in this patch of Brussels sprouts that...
Yeah, I mean, he goes on about a very French, there's lots of apple trees, pears around us, walnuts, and his big thing was wherever they grow, you can grow really good grapes too. He had just finished the enology degree out at Roseworthy, and they'd done a lot of work on homoclimes, which is the same climate in the southern hemisphere as the northern hemisphere, and he saw a lot of correlation with Burgundy at that time.
Any particular area of Burgundy?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but he liked the fact that the Piccadilly, high rainfall, humidity, altitude, there was this lovely gentle slope of Ashton, and I think he just thought, well, this is about as good as it's going to get, and then decided to plant the vineyard. Brian Crozer at Tapinapa, or back in the day it was Petaluma, had only just planted the Tears vineyard in 78 or 79, and he was the first vineyard in
amazing
in
Piccadilly.
So and so that's all planted to Chardonnay, and then Stephen followed suit in 82 with Ashton Hills, but more sort of Pinot focused.
Yeah. So the question with Ashton Hills, is it more than just Pinot? We've had the Chardonnay here. Like, what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, and when I started at Ashton, it was all about the Pinot. They had made a couple of vintages of the Piccadilly Chardonnay as well. From 2017, they started that. And I have a particular love of Chardonnay, and had recognised that the Adelaide Hills is the hero variety is Chardonnay. So I sort of set about, I guess, elevating our Chardonnay program so that we were or could be recognised as a great Chardonnay and Pinot producer rather than just a good Pinot producer. And so, it's incredibly lucky that we were able to source these two vineyards to lease. And so I think, particularly over the last 3 years, our Chardonnay program has elevated, and we've had a run of fairly solid results with the Chardonnay in terms of like points and kind of medals at wine shows. So it's nice to see that we're elevating that, and we are, still refining the Pinots.
Yeah.
We do make a little bit of Gamay as well, not from the Piccadilly, from a little vineyard in Woodside, which is just something different, really delicious, really juicy.
Last time. I love that one.
Yeah. In a similar fashion to Pinot, but it just offers something a little bit different. So we are more than Pinot, but
Riesling?
Pinot, and there's still the hat full of Riesling. So those 8 rows on the vineyard, we still make a Riesling out of, albeit in incredibly minute quantities.
Do you take learnings from your time at Grosset and trying to create?
He's a pretty good winemaker, isn't he? Ours carries a little bit more, I guess, a little weight and texture than the Clare Valley Rieslings, and we sort of finish the ferment with a little bit of residual sugar still in there just to help balance the acidity. So a little bit of a different style to what Jess kind of famous for, but still lovely and perfumed nonetheless.
Cool. Let's move on to the next two. Let's pull this one out. So you say what, Woods on...
Woods Hill on the left, and Bow House on the right.
Okay. So we've got the 2025 single vineyard Woods Hill, and we've got the 2025 Bow House vineyard. Yeah, that's right. Bow House.
Rosé. It'll be the next Ashton Hills wine.
No sparkling yet? No...
Oh, look, we used to make a sparkling, 100% Pinot.
Sparkling Pinot?
Yeah, it was all Pinot, so in a rosé style. But it's a project that has since finished. It was a pretty popular wine around Cellar, but I have a huge belief in be good at what you're good at. And I just thought refining the range to just predominantly Chardonnay and Pinot was all I needed to do. There's a lot of producers in the Adelaide Hills that make great sparkling, that dedicate their life to sparkling wine. Deviation Road, Deosa, these producers are heavily invested in sparkling. Yeah. But I just thought I'd rather concentrate on the table wine. So we finished making that sparkling.
So you said to have these two side by side, the Woods Hill?
Yep.
And also the Bow House. What's the difference?
So these are the two vineyards that we have leased. So we've got our 3 hectare estate vineyard just out the front of Cellar and Winery. If you jump across the road, you jump into the Woods Hill vineyard, and a vineyard planted to about a third Chardonnay, 2/3 Pinot. So all planted to the D5 V12 clone of Pinot on the Woods Hill. So provides a lovely darker fruit profile, density, still with lovely sort of freshness, but in that sort of darker spectrum to the wine. These have both got sort of fairly equal parts of whole bunch and oak in them. So really the difference is site. So this is a very soft undulating site at Woods Hill. The Bow House on the right, this vineyard is a couple of kilometres down from us in the sort of southern pocket of the Piccadilly Valley, a very steep sort of 30% gradient vineyard, east facing. So that means you get the lovely sort of morning gentle sun.
Yeah.
By the time that sort of harsher afternoon sun comes along, the vineyard's in a fair bit of shade, and that sort of creates a wine with lovely sort of lifted florals, more of those red, crunchy red fruits, a beautiful acidity to it, and a lovely sort of gravelly tannin. So we do a small bottling of these to show as single vineyards, but sort of 70% of these go into the Piccadilly. So I guess, by looking at these, I guess I'm trying to showcase the quality of fruit that we are using for our Piccadilly Pinot at the, entry level.
Quality, but also site as well, right?
Yeah.
And just on the nose on both. I haven't tasted it. Like the right one, the
Bow House.
Yeah. It just jumps out. Those lifted florals.
Yeah,
and
it's
this one
fragrant.
It's a bit more masculine, a bit more.
Yeah, it's got that density
structure,
and power and drive to it. So that's all one clone at Woods Hill, and there's 4 clones planted at Bow House. But really, the major difference of those two is the fact that the aspect of the Bow House is that east facing and does create those lovely sort of lifted florals. But so this is the second release of the single vineyard range from these two sites, and they're 2 really wonderful sites to work with.
Oh, good.
Oh,
delicious. Which one do I prefer? I don't know. Each is a
it's always a good question to ask, and it's always interesting to see what people say, because I mean they are extremely different wines.
I'm just going to take a moment first.
Change daily.
This one really just jumps up and kind of hits you. You don't have to think about it as much.
Yeah.
This one you have to think about it a bit more.
Yeah.
So this one's very easier just to go. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I like that because you can see it. But the incredible structure in that Woods Hill and the depth and density to it is quite impressive.
You mentioned development as well. What's the development you'll see in these two?
Yeah, so I guess we've been working with these 2 sites for a few years in terms of we used to purchase fruit from these 2 growers before we had the vineyards as leases. This does go that beautiful tertiary character, but still with immense sort of drive to the wine and that power. Can always handle a little bit more new oak as well with the sort of density behind it. The Bow House, it still retains those lovely florals for quite some time. And, although we're sort of fairly early on in our journey, it's going to be exciting to see, a consistent release of wines from these vineyards and how they do age. But they've been incredibly popular vineyards with other producers for quite some time. So it's good.
You mentioned Piccadilly Valley. We talked about Ashton Hills on a hill. We talk about valleys as well. What is it about the Piccadilly Valley then that kind of makes it special and unique for kind of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay?
Yep. So, I mean, the warmer, lower sites, and we're at Ashton.
What altitude we're talking about, yeah?
We're at Ashton, we're 570 metres, which is, pretty high for the Adelaide Hills. There's a few vineyards higher than us, but, we're one of the higher ones. And then sort of the lower parts, you probably drop down to high 300s. And it's those warmer sites that are a little bit more exposed to sun that normally provide, the wines like this, or the fruit that delivers wines like this, a little bit more sort of generosity and density. The higher elevated ones that are on, various aspects, we're south facing at Ashton Hills, that's east facing. Yeah, you tend to get more of those florals. So you can really, I think, build or create a wine that has lots of elements and layers of complexity by sourcing from different pockets. And, the clonal diversity of some of the sites is really amazing. The Piccadilly was sort of very much set up for the next wave of sparkling wine in Australia. So this, we're talking back in the 80s, 90s, until sort of Tassie came along and became the place to be. So there's quite a lot of sparkling clones up there. Obviously, there's still a lot of sparkling wine produced from the Piccadilly, but a lot of vineyard owners sort of had to change the way that they prune and manage their vineyard to change them from sort of sparkling production to table. But you can use those sparkling clones, which is, this is a sparkling clone, to produce, really beautiful, intense wines.
So learning about these different sites, is this Stephen still having his kind of thumbprint there as well, teaching you, hey, with this site, look out for this?
Yeah, he'd never worked with either of these sites until we sourced them.
Yeah.
He's always incredibly interested to see the parcels of fruit, during vintage and what the fruit quality's like. And I do still get him to have a look at the blends at the end and give a yay or nay, or what do you think of these, just to see how they fit. There's one particular grower that we work with, Jamie and Jenny Grigg, who their vineyard was established with Stephen. So Stephen gave advice to the Greek family on planting this vineyard back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And Stephen then sourced the fruit for the Piccadilly Pinot. So we still source fruit from this vineyard all these years later. We're one of our favourite growers. And it's probably that site that Stephen says, watch out for this year. How does it look? Be careful it does this. That's probably the knowledge. And then obviously the estate vineyard, in terms of all those tiny little sections that we have, he always remembers the row numbers and, says, watch out, do this, do that. So his advice is still very much very important for me.
Yeah, trying to build on that point before where you said that everything's in his head at the moment.
Everything is in his head, yeah.
So
there wasn't much written down, I don't think.
So are you writing things down now?
I'm trying to. We're very similar like that. We're not sort of record keepers or, note takers. I guess when I sit down with him, particularly pre-vintage and go, here's what I'm thinking of this vintage and here's what I'm thinking of doing. I'd say, does this season remind you of anything historically? Like, does it remind you of 14 or 12 and then what did you do then and how did it work out? And more often than not, he's got an incredible back selection of Ashton Hills wines. And so more often than not, we can go back and look at those wines and see how they're developing now and then go, right, well, perhaps that didn't work out and perhaps we could do this. There's still kind of a pre-vintage chat with Stephen to get an idea of the season ahead and whether it sort of replicates anything historically.
I find that always amazing how people can just recollect, the 2003 vintage and it was hot in the...
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you ask him and he'd be like, I don't know. But you remember, he says, and this is actually true because you remember the really good ones and you remember the really bad ones and anything in between is just like, it must have been okay because I don't really remember it. But, something like 2008 was incredibly hot in South Australia. There was a sort of 2-week heat wave. Stephen saw it coming and picked his whole vineyard in 2 days, put all the fruit in the cold store around the corner, and then just fermented batch by batch at the time that he could. So he had some fruit sitting in the cool room for a couple of weeks to beat that heat wave. And you look at those wines now and they're incredible. And you're like, people are scared of leaving a bin of fruit for more than 4 hours before processing. And it's like, dude, this guy had it in a cold room for a couple of weeks.
Maybe there's a technique there. Maybe
there
you should try
is a technique there. Yeah. So we do pick... hand pick one day, leave the fruit overnight in the car park. Yeah. It sounds not very romantic. But the nighttime temperatures really help cool the fruit down and then process the next day. So he's very quick on his thinking, Stephen, to do stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
I'm just going to kind of reflect back onto, you said you started your journey with Ashton at 2019.
Yeah.
And then 2020 was your first vintage. And this for me, it's like flashback to COVID and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What was that like during that time?
It was insane. So there was myself, Stephen, and we had one guy helping us out in the winery.
And you had masks and everything.
Yeah, so no one else, the cellar door had been shut down. So cellar door wasn't open. Other staff from other sites couldn't come and visit. So even the viticulturist was like, not really coming in or not really interacting, and it was so quiet around the site. It was probably one of the best vintages ever because no one could come and just sort of disturb you. Yeah, it was a crazy time. And then before the 2021 vintage, Stephen sat me down and he said, "Oh, look, you seem to know what you're doing. The longer he hangs around, the more that they don't think that."
So when did he send the letter?
So at 2019 we did vintage together, and then he sent the letter at the end of the 2019 vintage.
Yeah.
And then I started in sort of July 2019 full time.
I reckon most go, this COVID business shit, this is not going anywhere. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, so he'd come down for coffee and we'd all stand there, just the three of us, and you'd have the updates from the World Health Organization.
The numbers each day.
Numbers and it was a wild time, wasn't it? Yeah. Very strange.
So reflecting back now, so was it 21 was your first full vintage?
21 was the first vintage that I kind of had complete control.
So 21, 22, 23, 24, and having 25 now. Yeah. How has your evolution been during those 4 years, 5 years?
It's taken me a couple of vintages, including 19, 21 to kind of just get my head around the site and the vintage variation that we can have. It's a fairly marginal grape growing region, the Adelaide Hills, and particularly up in the higher parts, rain events and the disease pressure can be, pretty high, and obviously yields can fluctuate, dramatically because of these events. I guess I've really tried to stay true to the style that Stephen had made. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But all I wanted to do was perhaps just tighten up a few 1%ers to make the wines potentially a little bit fresher, a little bit more vibrant, just keep an eye on things a bit, keep those alcohols, more sort of moderate. And when I do show them to Stephen, invariably he loves them, and it's a really nice sort of acknowledgement saying, getting good job. These are
You still
really
show
good ones.
every vintage to
Yeah,
him?
yeah. I show him wine all the time, out
Yeah.
of barrel.
Yeah.
What do you think of this?
And are you nervous every time you
Yeah.
can show it?
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, there was one batch of fruit. I can't remember what vintage it was. Oh, 21. Yeah, there was a batch of fruit that I had to store. A batch of wine. I had to store off-site because we just didn't have enough space at the winery.
Yeah.
And I'd go around and top it fortnightly, as is the sort of regime at Ashton. Anyway, I got this fruit back after about 6 months of storage off-site, and I tasted it, and I was like, holy shit, this is all Bretty. And I was like, oh my God, there's like 5,000 litres of... And I was freaking out, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I was like getting samples to take to the lab to get tested, and I'm ringing Stephen, and he didn't pick up. And anyway, I dropped these samples off to the lab to get tested to see how bad it was. And eventually Stephen called back and he said, what's going on? I said, can you come down and I want to show you a couple of wines. No worries. So he trots down the hill and I poured a wine. I said, what do you think of this? And he smells it. He said, oh, it's beautiful. It's delicious.
Yeah.
And I was like, nothing. He's like, oh, no, it's like fragrant. It's like beautiful fruit. I was like, what about this one? He's like, hey, it's the same. It's like glorious. And I said, you don't see anything. There's nothing wrong here. And he says, no, what are you talking about? I said, you don't see any Brett. And he's like, no.
Yeah.
And that's when he said, he's like, dude, because
chill out.
21 had been a very long vintage,
Yeah.
with a lot of volume. I was running, I guess on empty by this stage. And he said to you, go home, relax, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Trust the process kind of thing. A couple of days later, I got the results back from the lab, 0. No cells, no 4EP or 4EG, 0.
Yeah.
So, and I looked at the wines again and it felt beautifully fresh and vibrant, fruity. I was like, well, what the hell was I thinking? But that was to me the time of like, all right, trust the process. Sometimes just take a step back and all kind of will work out. But
in creating these wines now, some people talk about the wines being more, I guess, minimal in dimension, speaking more of the land. Other ones more kind of winemaker as well. Do you think there is a Stephen George kind of thumbprint? And are you trying to kind of honour that type of thumbprint across the wine?
I don't know that there's a thumbprint. There's definitely a stylistic or a character of the estate vineyard that's what the vineyard gives. I don't know that it's necessarily a thumbprint from Stephen. What I'm trying to honour is delivering wines of immense pleasure and honesty. So I would never try and force the wine to be anything other than what nature has given us. For example, the 23 vintage is quite cool, elegant. I never forced them to be super juicy. They were just elegant wines. 24 on the other hand, very dense. It was sort of a warmer, more condensed ripening period. The wines have a lovely sort of density and darkness, and that's just the wines that they are. So I think what I'm trying to do with, Stephen's legacy or, the legacy of Ashton Hills is kind of just honour that honesty of what we produce.
Yeah. You're not trying to establish your Liam Van Pelt legacy.
Nah, it's gonna.
You're still in honeymoon phase,
You're still
though,
in the
aren't
honeymoon phase. Yeah.
You can't do that till like 20 years
Look,
time.
I would love to be at Ashton Hills for the next 40 years and pass the baton on to someone else, and have 3 winemakers at the site in 100 years would be a really great thing.
Could be 3 girls.
could be one of my girls. I'm going to advise them to do something else. But yeah, I think that history is really important. I mean, you look at sites like Mount Pleasant that have had, a handful of winemakers over sort of 150 years, the amount of history that has behind it, and, the continuation of the story is better. The wines tend to evolve naturally, and there's a clear progression in lineage and style. So yeah, I think it would be great if I could be there for a few more years.
Maybe your legacy is the fantastic Chardonnays you're still producing.
Or the Gamay.
Gamay. Or the Gamay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Which one should we? Actually, I should say this one's starting to open up.
The wood still?
Beautifully as well.
Yeah.
And now I'm more the woods.
You're going to lean that way?
Yeah, lean that way.
Yeah. As I said, it'll change.
I'll keep that on the glass.
It'll change daily. Yeah, it's exciting to be able to deal with 2 sites that are, incredibly different.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to the big boy, the 2025 Estate Pinot Noir. Anyone?
That's fine, yeah.
So this estate Pinot Noir, this is on that 3 hectares of land where the cellar door is as well. Tell us about this one. What makes it so special?
So the estate Pinot is from our aptly named estate vineyard, where Stephen has done all the hard viticultural work over 40 years. So those 7 clones are planted in 12 different sections. So the vineyard is as I said, south facing slope. Rows run east-west, so we don't get any sort of harsh sun on either side. So beautiful sort of even ripening. 7 clones planted in 12 different sections. So some of those sections are only sort of 2 rows long. We might get half a ton of fruit off of those. Each section is picked individually, brought back to the winery, fermented separately. So I might break each section, down to 2 or 3 different fermenters. Might use, varying amounts of whole bunch in each one or no whole bunch. And then kept separate during the barrel maturation as well, because we make the 25 estate, and in years that are worthy, we make a reserve Pinot. So being able to go through each of those different sections and pick out, stylistically, the estate and reserve are very different. The reserve is all about sort of power and concentration and tannin and, ageability. So to be able to tease out those barrels from the different sections and see, year on year, which section has kind of, produced lovely floral styles or more fruit driven, or, real structural pieces. That's kind of the excitement. But yeah, the estate is I guess the best representation, I think, of our little vineyard. Again, a little bit of whole bunch in there to provide some spice and structure. Typically only sort of 10 to 20% new oak, so not a lot of oak in there, really about sort of letting the fruit shine. But hopefully a really delicious.
Oh, it's really delicious, and that savoury aspect to it as well. Yeah. It almost sits at the intersection of like the last 2. It's like it's got those florals, but it's also the structure as well. A bit of everything. Yeah. But kind of like amped up.
Yeah, and I always find that the sort of core of fruit of the estate just has more power. It's an older vineyard than those others, but it has a sort of density and power to it, but still very tight. And again, those sort of lovely floral aromatics, and hopefully will look good in some years to come. But pretty happy with how the 25 is looking.
How was the 25 vintage as a whole?
It was good. It was early. It crept up on us quite quickly, and as it did across sort of most of Australia, was a fairly early vintage. But then the sort of ripening period was nice and long and sort of fairly moderate. We were able to hang some fruit out there on the vine to sort of build in sort of intensity without it sort of getting too high in Gamay, and really good yields for the first time in since 2021. So 22, 3, 4 were all incredibly small yielding years. So first year of a nice abundant fruit to deal with, which was really exciting.
But no reserve there.
Yeah, we do. We did bottle a reserve. Yeah. That wine is almost entirely allocated to our cellar door customers. I'll have to send you one. But so we rarely sort of show that one around, especially at such a young age. Yeah. But the estate's is sort of the best example of the vintage from our side.
Okay, we talked about the winemaker. I guess from the other side, the consumers and the trends that you're seeing at the moment. Do you kind of look at what the consumers are drinking at the moment? Do you try and kind of line towards that? What are you seeing?
Gamay is pretty popular.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Great food wine, right?
Yeah, great food wine. Yeah, beautiful acid to it. Look, in terms of the wider industry, there is, I think, a little bit of a downturn in terms of those bigger styles. Fortunately for us, we're entirely focused on lighter to medium body wines.
Which I think is like right.
That people are sort of gravitating to now. And we're seeing, a number of younger consumers, younger families coming through the cellar door, really enjoying the wines, becoming part of our wine club and sort of becoming regular visitors to the site. I wouldn't say that we're going to go out and make a Pinot Gris next week because that's the number one selling white wine. We're sort of pretty focused on the wines that we have and the styles that we produce. So we'll let someone else dominate the market with Pinot Gris. But, each year focusing on making, the best possible Chardonnay and the best possible Pinot that we can is kind of...
We'll let the New Zealanders maybe keep on making a bit of Pinot Gris.
Let the New Zealanders do it. Yeah. They can have the converts,
Yeah, because I do see, that kind of trend towards like lighter, more medium body type of wines. Yeah. And we were just talking before about moderation as well, kind of drinking less, but drinking better. I think this is kind of like right in that slot at the moment. And I know with Ashton Hills, it's a very small boutique winery. And,
it is, yeah.
And like we talked about 3 hectares, but you talked about other leased vineyards as well. How big is it? actually?
It's an answer that will never be given. No, so
How many bottles are you making?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. I can't count. So we have 3 hectares where we're from, and the 2 lease vineyards are 6 hectares each, roughly. So that's about our production.
Yeah.
As I said, not big. As I said, the thing for us in the Piccadilly, or wine growers in the Piccadilly Valley, is that seasonal variation in terms of getting a really bad, flowering or fruit set can absolutely destroy your crop levels. So it kind of doesn't matter how much land you have, you just need really favourable conditions at key times to be able to get a decent crop. So we're still very much boutique, very much hands-on. It's myself in the winery with one helper. We have Tamara, our cellar door manager, who
small team.
runs the show by herself. So so the Christmas show is very small, but it's hands-on. People come to the cellar door and know Tamara and know.
You're still working the cellar door as well.
I float in and out, but I've lost.
You're mowing the lawns.
I don't mow the lawns anymore. No. I'm sort of less involved in that side, but still, it's obviously right next to the winery, so I'm in there all the time. But yeah, still a lovely, homely feeling, I guess, of a very small team. So
I think that's where, with a smaller team, you give it love, craft, artisan feel, and care as well to the wines. And drinking this lineup makes me realise why I love Pinot.
Yeah. And I mean, these wines offer, I think, incredible value. We were only out in trade.
And the Chardonnay as well.
And the Chardonnay, We were only out in trade yesterday, showing these wines around, and, one sommelier who's got a fairly heavily Burgundy heavy wine list, just commented on, oh my God, there's 4 Pinots here that are absolutely delicious for a tenth of the price of what we're paying for these. Hopefully people are drinking local, and paying a little bit more but drinking a lot better, maybe less, but I'm happier to sell better wine.
Or you need to do double the price, put Grand Cru or
Grand Piccadilly.
Estate Grand Cru.
Yeah.
Double the price.
Yeah.
Okay, we're towards the end of the pod. I'm going to throw some rapid fire questions at you as well, a bit of this and that as well. So, do you prefer whole bunch or fully destemmed?
Whole bunch.
Burgundy or Barolo?
Am I paying for it?
Yes. No, you're not paying for it. You're not paying for it.
Oh, I'd still roll the dice with Burgundy.
Burgundy?
If I'm paying for it, probably Barolo.
Barolo, okay. Adelaide Hills or McLaren Vale?
Adelaide Hills.
Easy. Pinot Noir or Chardonnay?
You're not making this very easy, are you? To consume or make?
Consume.
Chardonnay.
Fine dining or street food?
Street food.
Sweet or savoury?
Wait, am I paying for the fine dining? No, street food. Sweet or savoury? Savoury.
Savoury. Do you follow your head or do you follow your heart?
Heart.
What's more important to you, the process or the outcome?
Trust the process.
Trust the process. That's it.
If you trust the process, the outcomes are given. Yeah.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Last one. What excites you about the future of Ashton Hills, or even for yourself as well? What should we be looking forward to?
I just think the wine's getting better and better. The amount of work that we're doing in the vineyard and the backing that we have from our family ownership in terms of...
Maybe you're getting better and better as well.
Maybe I'm starting to understand it. Having the backing and full trust from, the families that own us to invest in the vineyards, because you cannot make a great wine out of shit fruit. It is just impossible. I can certainly make a shit wine out of grapefruit, but you need that grapefruit to start with, because I think as a winemaker, all we're doing is preventing the wine from getting worse and worse as time goes on. So we're just trying to minimize the deterioration of the fruit. So you really need to start with the best possible fruit. Treat it gently, treat it honestly.
Yeah.
And I think great wine will follow.
But every year's a learning process.
Every year it's like wiping the slate clean and going, well, shit, what did I do last year? It's raining this year. It wasn't raining last year. So that there's a vineyard that is closely associated with us, kind of next door, that has been purchased, ripped out, and is going to be replanted to Pinot and Chardonnay. It's on a beautiful site.
What's that going to be called? Is it called another vineyard or Van Pelt? No?
Yeah, no, it's not. No. It's have you heard of Lindsay Barrett? He was another sort of early pioneer of the Adelaide Hills. One of our families that own the 3 wineries, just between them, purchased this vineyard personally. But going to plant it to Pinot and Chardonnay.
No Pinot Gris.
No Pinot Gris. Yeah, and is going to be amazing. in 10 years' time, once it's sort of planted and
When's the
established.
first vintage for that one?
It's still not in the ground, so they're planting it this year.
Yeah.
So we'll be, I guess, 5 years off of seeing some fruit, and 10 years until it kind of reaches some sort of maturity. But
So the 2031 vintage.
it's a long game, but it's going to be an amazing vineyard. So having that come into the family will be amazing. So yeah, I think there's lots to look forward to.
Cool. Any final words?
I do not have any final words. No,
Fantastic.
we don't have any events coming up.
Yeah.
I'd really just implore people to kind of drink local to
Yeah.
wherever they are.
Yeah.
And really support, all producers out there that are trying their absolute hardest to put the best possible wine on people's tables. So although I didn't do it yesterday with the Delamot, drink local.
Yeah, drink local. But, just to answer the question, is Ashton Hills producing Australia's greatest Pinot Noir? It's pretty damn close to it, I think. I like drinking this one. Again, I'm falling back in love with Pinot. Like I went on this Chardonnay trip, and then now it's kind of back to Pinot, but your Chardonnay is also still good as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's some incredible Pinots in Australia. It's, it's a lofty height to even be considered that it's, in the top 5 or 10, but, it's something that we continually strive for, to put the best wine out. And if people enjoy it, that's awesome.
Well, that's it. Let's go check out Ashton Hills Wines. Go visit the cellar door as well. Adelaide Hills, 30 minutes from Adelaide, is it?
Yeah, it's 25 minutes up the freeway.
But do book before
book.
going.
Yes, please book.
Don't just rock up.
It's incredibly small.
Don't just rock up. Or check out the website as well, ashtonhills.com.au. Thank you, Liam.
No worries, man. Thank you. It's been great.
And we say here, we drink, we try, we learn, and we connect. Thank you. Bye.